Are you ready for this one? She's back. Episode 60 was Sarah and Jen, and we talked about IVF and how they were both going through fertility journeys. And in that episode, Jen had talked about, she had this amazing story about her father passed away, and he had left her an inheritance that was in a trust, and they were considering hiring a surrogate. And the exact amount of money they needed for the surrogate was what was left in her trust. And she was considering whether or not, she and her husband were considering whether or not to go the surrogate route. Well, they did. And she came back to talk about it. It was an amazing, I guess, episode 2 of this, episode 1 of this fertility journey for Jen and her husband, and they now have a lovely 2-year-old boy, and I can't wait for you to hear about her story. She's such a bright light. She's such a happy soul. It was really great to hear her story. And a lot of you had asked whatever happened. So here you go. Here's what happened. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Jen. It was so nice to see her, and I'm so happy for her for this journey. Thanks for coming back every week. Thanks for your emails at birdieboyproductions.com. Thanks for going to see the machine. Thanks for watching Razzle Dazzle. Thanks for everything. I hope you enjoy this episode with me and Jen. I'm so glad you're back. Did they tell you that you've been highly requested?
No.
Oh, yeah.
No one told me anything. I was just like, okay.
No, people are asking, whatever happened to Jen and Sarah? Did they have babies? Did she get a surrogate? Whatever happened? Please have her back on. We're dying to know what happened.
That's so cool.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, you never know who listens in and who, is curious.
Yeah. So what happened?
Oh my gosh, I have a 2-year and 3-month-old boy named Cy.
Oh my God.
He says, when I say, what's your name? He says, CY Cy, because it's spelled CY Cy. So he's a delight and an actual miracle.
Yeah.
And they're all miracles, but he's like, it shouldn't be here. And he is.
Why?
Because, it took us 7 years to conjure him into this world. And, he was, I don't remember where exactly we were at the last time we spoke, but the top line is that there was 5 embryos made, biological embryos, with me and my husband's stuff over the course of 3 years. And 2 of them I tried to implant inside myself and they didn't work. And then we finally made the call. I think this must have been around that time.
It was before.
Okay.
I think before what you're about to say.
Okay. Yeah, there was kind of like it's like one of those like when you know moments where you're not quite sure when the answer is going to find you, but like there was a moment at which my body was like, you're done. Like, you're done. You've tried hard enough. Like, you don't need to do this anymore. And I kind of gave myself that pass. And there was some mourning in that process. But ultimately, it was like I knew with every ounce of my being, like I couldn't put my body through anything else.
Yeah.
We at the time had 3 embryos left in the bank, in the whatever cryo bank.
In the cryo bank.
We'll call it the cryo bank.
Yeah.
And I was like, why am I going to keep trying something that's just not working? And it wasn't just like, oh, you try it and you move on. Like, it's such a toll on your body. It's like you're shooting yourself up with drugs, and then you have to have a procedure, and then you have to like recover from that procedure, and then you've got to wait the 10 days to see if it works. And then when it doesn't work, then your whole body has to detox all those hormones. It's not a miscarriage. It's just it's an embryo that didn't take. I was just like, I can't do that again. It takes like 3 to 4 months to like cycle through the kind of physical and emotional toll every time you do that.
Jeez.
And I was just done.
Yeah.
I must have been like 6 years of just, many different versions of disappointment. And I couldn't, it was emotional and physical. Everything said, stop. Like, you've done enough. You don't need to do this anymore. And so that's when we decided to go down the surrogacy route. And that's a whole, I'm sure, which we'll get into. But, the top line of it was that we had these 3 embryos left. We ultimately signed with the surrogacy agency, who it's like it's like a full service situation because it's such an intricate process that like rules and laws and things that are built around it that like one person couldn't figure out. So the agencies really help you navigate all insurance and Supreme Court of California laws and contracts and lawyers. So they help you navigate all of that. And we sign with an agency, and we eventually, it's a matching service. They match you with a woman or a family that is, you know, on the other side of it. And we match with this woman who is wonderful. And we tried to, so we used our third embryo with her, and it didn't work, which was like the craziest thing. Because by the time that happens, you're like, oh, this is a woman who has 3 kids. She's a machine. Like her body's meant to do this.
Right.
Like she has, you know, easy childbirth. She loves being pregnant. Like, of course it's an embryo. It's tested. Everything's perfect. Like, of course it's going to work. And it didn't. So that was a whole thing, which we can dig into later. But then COVID happened. This is all happening in the midst of COVID.
Oh my gosh.
And then we tried our 4th embryo, and it worked, and she had an easy pregnancy, and now we have a 2-year-old, a little over 2-year-old son, and he's wonderful. So that's the
broad
top.
stroke.
That's the broad strokes, and then
Yes.
obviously there's a lot of like little juicy details in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I know on the podcast you had not yet decided to go the surrogacy route, but you told the story about, I think your dad passed and left you enough funds to be able to do that, which was amazing story.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably one of the big things that resonated with people who are listening is like, did she do it? Because everything led to you should.
Yeah.
In the story that you told.
Yeah. And like
know?
the numbers were weird because, you know, your agency gives you a quote on what it costs. And it's an obscene amount of money. And it is not lost on us that like it is a massive privilege to be able to do something like this because not everyone would be able to.
Right.
But there's this range, and the fact that like what was left in that account from like 40 years ago was like right in the dead center of that range. And like I've been carrying that money around thinking, oh, someday I'll use it for a down payment on a house, or maybe I used a little bit of it for college, and like it had whittled down over the years. And then it was such a random number, and the numbers were so closely aligned that it was like, this has to be the gift that I've been waiting to use this for, because I never, you know, I was always going to use it for something that was really meaningful.
Well, I'd say that this is meaningful.
It's totally meaningful, and it's so crazy and there's, you know, a couple things around it, because we had a friend who, I don't know if we talked about this in the last one, we had a friend who passed away kind of in the midst of a lot of this, and there's some circle of life stuff there as it relates to Cy. And Cy, his middle name is Alexander. It was my friend Alex who passed away, so he's named after Alex and my dad. But with Alex and then with my dad, the circle of life stuff, it's all kind of, you know, when you pull back, fairly, you know, spiritual when you think about, you know, I don't know. You just, you can explain that kind of like story and the narrative and the kind of like linear connection when you have time and you have perspective on it. But in that process, like you don't always see it. And now it feels very clear.
It's very clear that was the way it was supposed to be. That's so crazy. That's how life works, isn't it? If you're on the right path, the path just shows up.
Yeah.
And you just kind of go, oh yeah, this is the way. Super easy.
Yeah.
Not that it's easy, but it's a bit effortless.
Yeah.
I think. You know, stuff to work. But were you, I mean, I don't even know where to start. I have 8,000 questions.
Ask them all.
Were you terrified?
Yes.
You had to be terrified.
Well, it's, you know, so the timeline, because the timelines are always so strange, again, in retrospect. So we found out that that the pregnancy didn't take with Laura. Our surrogate's name was Laura. We found out the pregnancy didn't work on Monday, March 9th, 2020.
Oh boy.
On Wednesday, March 11th. So we were like, and we were just like, what do you mean? Like, we've done all of this. Like, we've committed this money. We are like, it's finally a sure thing. Like, what do you mean this didn't work? So we had this like day of just like, you know, true despair.
Yeah.
By Tuesday, it was like you couldn't be around someone who was sneezing or coughing, and people were freaking out about COVID. Wednesday, I left work because I actually, funny enough, a girlfriend of mine was like patient zero in California. She
Oh
was
my
like in those
God.
first 2,000 people who got COVID. And I happened to have dinner with her the Saturday before,
Oh,
and we were like
geez.
sharing chopsticks.
Oh my God.
And so I was like, I definitely have COVID, which I didn't have COVID at the time. Not that it matters. But so I left work on Wednesday thinking, I'm going to go home and just be safe. I took my computer, shut the door to my office that Wednesday. And by Friday, the world shut down.
Right.
So that week was like, it started with like this thing that was like, you know, spiraling, but like we didn't really know what it was going to be. And we all thought we were going to be gone for 2 weeks. And on that first day of that week, this was like a no for us. And then by Friday, it was like, oh, we completely forgot that we actually just had this failure because the world is shutting down and it's Armageddon.
Right.
And then that was March. And then our fertility clinic shut down. All doctors' offices shut down. Like no one was doing anything. So it gave us this kind of window to just regroup.
Yeah.
And then our fertility clinic called us and they said, you know, we're going to start doing like a couple procedures a week and you'll be first on the list. So they let our surrogate Laura back in the office in July. And we couldn't go. Like we weren't allowed to go to any appointments, whereas we went the first time when it didn't take. But it was just, you know, it was that strange time with COVID. She got pregnant in July and like the whole surrogacy was on Zoom.
Oh my God.
Like she would go to doctor's appointments and we weren't allowed to go. So we would just FaceTime. So she would like bring a phone and she would like show us what was happening. But, you know, it was no contact.
Crazy.
And so it was crazy in general because the whole thing is wild that you can actually create, you know, what could become life and outside of your body in general is wild.
Yeah.
Science is amazing.
Yeah.
And then you can actually put it in another human being and that person can carry a child to term and deliver. Like that is just crazy on its own. And then we had this extra layer of like, it was early days of COVID for the whole pregnancy.
Right.
So it was all pretty nuts. But,
yeah.
you know, we also are my husband Goldie and I are fairly laid back people. And so there wasn't a lot of people were like, well, were you scared if she was, you know, having a glass of wine or if she's smoking cigarettes or if she's doing, and we were just like, if we don't trust her to do this, then like she's not the right match for us.
Right.
And so a lot of that kind of happens in the matching process of making sure that you're aligned with the things you're comfortable with. You know, if we were stricter, we probably wouldn't have been a great match for her. So, you know, we were kind of pre-matched on a lot of that stuff. So while it was crazy, I never really, and this is kind of carried through to our parenting style too, because we're not like, you know, we're not so much like rules people. Like we're like, you know, this woman's doing this amazing thing for us. Let's just let her do her thing. And if she's happy, it's going to be a happy pregnancy. And we don't want her to feel micromanaged by us. So it was crazy, but it wasn't terrifying.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. But I think it's different for everyone because I've connected with a lot of other women because when you go through something that's very specific and unique, everyone wants to introduce you to the person they know who did the thing. And so I wound up having this incredible group of women that I didn't know prior that were like 2 steps removed from my friend groups that were just there to support me. And I try to now do that for other women too because it's, again, so specific. Everyone's situation is just different.
Right.
You know, I've talked to other women who, you know, want to know everything that's going on with their surrogate at all times. And we just weren't like that.
Yeah. I don't think I would be like that either.
No.
Because yeah, you're right. A happy mommy is a happy baby.
Yeah.
And why? What's it gonna, you know? Babies are so resilient.
Yes.
They live through so much stuff that
Yeah.
why worry yourself to death about it or her?
Yeah.
Make her stressed.
Well, I think the other thing that's kind of interesting about the relationship, because it's a very specific relationship with another human being, and you're coming to it with a whole different set of life experiences. And, you know, it's incredibly intimate. You know, I mean, it's inside of your body. It's like as intimate as it gets.
Yeah.
But I just lost my train of thought. I was going to say something about the difference
about this experience.
Yes. Oh, this is what I was going to say is that, and the agencies will tell you this in the beginning, that there's the terminology we're called intended parents. They call us like IPs. Not that I'm an acronym person, but so we're the intended parents and she's the surrogate. And for intended parents, because they've been normally once you get to the place of surrogacy, you've either been through something tricky or maybe, a gay couple who can't have children, in a, whatever natural way. That's not the right terminology, but however we want to say that. But for intended parents, you've been through something. So everything feels like, well, there's going to be disappointment. Naturally, there's going to be disappointment because there's always disappointment. And this is just our story. And for the surrogate, because they've had easy pregnancies and like because they have to have had kids to do it.
Sure.
And they have to have a track record. But for them, it's like, oh, pregnancy's easy. Like, what do you mean? This is no big deal. And so you're coming to it from like these two very different places. And it's really emotional for the intended parents who are usually coming to it from just like a lot of challenges and obstacles.
And loss.
Yeah. And for a surrogate, it's like a joyful, easy thing that they can't understand kind of where all of the despair that you've been through. And I couldn't understand how it could just be so easy for someone.
Right.
So you're kind of coming to it from that place of like, how do we find common ground so that like we kind of respect what each other's life experience have been leading up to that.
Right. That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Are you still in touch with her?
I haven't talked to her in a while. Yeah. We stayed in touch on text message for probably the first year of Sai's life. Here we'll talk about bearing the lead, but so Sai was the fourth embryo of 5. And so we've got this last one in the cryobank, as we say in this forum. And so we had spoken to her a while back and she was going to do the last one for us and try it.
Oh, wow.
However, she moved to Texas. And so it wound up not working out that she could do it. And in the midst of all of this, we're also dealing with like abortion laws in the country and Roe v. Wade and, states overturning things. So to not be in California and to be in a state like Texas that it's a little bit more controversial. It's just a trickier situation. It's so, again, that's like another layer on top of this is like 3 years ago didn't have to think about any of that. And now that's actually part of the equation.
Right.
If something were to go wrong with the pregnancy, we'd have to get her out of Texas.
Right.
So it just felt a little too like a
risky,
an unnecessary stressor on a very stressful situation.
Right.
So at the time that she moved to Texas, and we decided we weren't going to do that last thing together, which was a huge disappointment because she was amazing.
Yeah.
We rematched with another surrogate, and that is very much hanging in the balance right now. So, as spoiler alert,
oh my gosh,
that's where we're at the moment.
It's exciting.
Yeah, but so we keep in touch a little bit here and there, and we'll text each other every so often. But it feels like there's like a really nice closure to the relationship, and
that's good.
Yeah,
that's good because I would imagine. As a certain type of person that could carry someone else's child and just give it over and be like, and that's for you.
Yeah.
What a selfless thing. I mean, she's getting paid, obviously. So it's not entirely selfless. And I don't know her circumstance, maybe that, or what you paid her, but it might have been life-changing money for her. And it's just a year of her life, really, to do something good, maybe for herself or her family. But it's got to be a really specific person who can just remain detached to this thing that grew inside your body.
Yeah, I think that, and again, the agencies are so great because they do this day in and day out. But, they always said to us, because prior to this, I was like, who would do this? Like, who would do this? This is crazy. Like, who would want to put their body through this for someone else? And yes, to your point, like, there's a financial benefit, but you still have to have a string of altruism in that.
100%.
So it's not just
else.
It's not just about getting paid. It definitely it's a very altruistic and selfless thing to do. But I think what is interesting, at least in my experience and from a lot of the experiences that I've connected with other women about who've been in this boat, like these women I cannot speak for them, but they don't want the baby. Like that's not the idea. They know that, they are doing a selfless act, that they're using their body to do something for someone else. But it seems fairly normal that like these women walk away and we got a lot of guidance on this from our agency, and there's like psychologists involved who are like, the best thing for a surrogate, the best thing for them is when they hand you that baby.
Oh,
And we went out and saw her. She has 3 kids. We went out and saw her and her family like 3 weeks after Sai was born. And I remember thinking when we did that, like, it is so important not only for her to feel the joy of her handing us that baby, because that's the closure for her, but for her 3 children to see us with that baby, because Sai lived in their home inside of her for 9 months. And during COVID, when they were all on lockdown, and like she was pregnant with him. So there's a relationship there. And so for her children to say, this is what my mom did for those people, and how happy that made us, to me, like that was also part of the closure.
Totally.
It's like, let's make sure that there's a moment where her kids get to see the kind of like fruits of everyone's labor and everyone's hard work to make this whole thing happen. And so I think it's more about that than it is about maybe like what we would assume and I'd say quote unquote normal, like in a normal pregnancy, like where you're like, how could you have a baby and hand it over to someone else? There's different boundaries that I think are naturally baked into this process. And I think for them, the altruism is the handing of the baby to someone else where they've been able to help someone else start their families.
Right.
So I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah.
I could see it.
And again, I can't speak for surrogates. I can only speak for my side of it.
Right.
But that's from a lot of the conversations I've had, that's what I've gleaned.
It makes sense. Yeah. I mean, there's so many selfless people on the planet, and being selfless is different for everybody. That's a big one.
It's a big one.
It's a big one. Your body just goes through so much when you're pregnant. I got pregnant very easily, and George's pregnancy was a little difficult, but Isla, if I could guarantee that happened and I had someone that I loved that needed it, I would have done it if I could guarantee I had my Isla pregnancy. As I played tennis till I was 9 months pregnant with her. I gained 25 pounds. I did nothing. It was a dream. And I had like pushed for 20 minutes. Boom, she's out. It was wonderful. As wonderful as that can be. It still was an upheaval, but golly, what a selfless thing to do.
It really is so incredible. And I think, again, from our perspective, we're like, why would anybody do this? Like, it seems like the hardest thing that a woman's body would ever have to go through. Like, I couldn't even do for myself, let alone for someone else. So there's so much beauty in the fact that there's people in this world that want to do that for other families.
It's very beautiful. So the thing about being pregnant, right, is you because the thing is growing in you, I feel like, and you've birthed it, there's this natural kind of metamorphosis that happens, right, in your physical body. So when the baby shows up, it's kind of connected. But you didn't get that.
No.
Were you aware of that? Did it mean anything to you? Probably not. But did it?
There was definitely, everyone's experience is different. I know women who carry their own kids who, like, even when they're 9 months pregnant, are like, can't fathom that on the other side is a baby. Like, there's still a kind of a mind trick, Jedi mind trick that happens with all of it, right? Yeah. But for us, because the whole pregnancy was so removed, and we were just, again, it was COVID and it was lockdown, but we were just kind of living our COVID lives for that whole time. She went into labor 3 weeks early.
Oh, wow.
So we were definitely, we wouldn't have been prepared no matter what, but we were like definitely not prepared.
Right.
And when we got the call that she went into labor, and like we got in the car to drive to the hospital, which was like about a 60-mile drive to the hospital she was delivering at, it was like we had no concept of what was coming because there's no physical manifestation of it.
Right.
So as much as it's like, and throughout the whole pregnancy, I was like, the pregnancy to me was about supporting Laura. Like, I had no understanding or connection or kind of physical relationship with Sai. And so the whole pregnancy was just making sure she was okay and that she was doing well and checking in on her and making sure it was a great experience for her, because the only thing I knew how to relate to was this other woman. Like, I didn't have any Like there's no hormones involved for you, nothing. So like all the way leading up to like the birth, it was incredibly removed. Even though in our minds we like rationally knew that this, I mean, it must be similar to almost an adoption where, you are handed a baby from someone else at when that happens.
Right.
And there's a mental preparation that you go through, but like until you're actually handed that baby, like you don't know what that's going to actually feel like.
Totally.
So, and then the beauty of it, and this is where it's like, this is where the privilege of having a surrogate comes in, was that I wasn't tired. I wasn't recovering.
My God.
I was strong. I was rested. I was working out. I was, I was just in a really strong physical place.
Mm-hmm.
And someone told me this, actually, another woman who I got connected with in this kind of like friends circle of women who've been through this. And she said to me before Sai came, she was like, the coolest thing was after she had 2 kids with a surrogate. After she had her first kid, she had a friend come over who had a baby the same age. And the friend was like exhausted and a wreck and just like a mess, and not in all the best ways, but like, and the friend said to her, like, God, you're so together. Like, how is like your house is calm, like everything is quiet, like you're put together, like your body's not doing all the thing. And really it was because she had the privilege of being handed this baby and in a place where there was no recovery for her.
Right.
And I think that was the gift in it, right? Is like, my body wasn't producing any hormones, milk, like any of the things that your body has to do. I didn't have to go through any recovery. There was no baths needed. I don't even know what regular people do
Right.
when they're recovering in a situation like this. So we just came into it from like such a strong place, and the house was calm.
Yeah.
And we were just like ready to just do it.
That's awesome.
It was great. Yeah, it was really great. And I didn't know what it was going to feel like, but it was, once he was there, it was like, okay, this is our kid.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And the thing that it does too is it, on a gender perspective, like, in a heterosexual relationship with a man and a woman where there's like gender roles
Yeah.
that are just natural because we are who we are. It leveled us out because Sai didn't need me. He didn't need me because I was producing milk for him, or he didn't come from my body. Like there's, I presume, physiological things that happen where the child needs the mother because of science and biology that we just didn't have. And so it leveled the whole playing field for me and my husband because we were equal. There was no physical attachment to my body that would make us have like, just, I don't know if you call it a power dynamic or a responsibility dynamic, or, who needs to do more. Like we just came to it with the same responsibilities. And so the partnership was really an interesting thing to look at between us too, because, there was nothing needed from my body to like keep the child alive. And then it put us in equal playing fields.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, again, if I could have had a child and not have had to gone through all of this, like I would, I'm sure, trade it. This was our story.
Sure.
But like when you actually look at some of the kind of interesting things you're confronted with when you're in a situation that pushes you beyond your limits, it begs a lot of these questions of, biology and gender roles and partnership and, whatnot.
Yeah, that's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Because I breastfed for a year. So, I was exhausted because pumping to me was more trouble than just waking up and putting a baby on a boob.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather just wake up and do it because, first of all, it would take me 20 minutes to get Bert awake. Like we tried in the very beginning of Georgia to pump and let him feed at night because he wanted to. And I was like, oh my God, this is so much more work for me than just waking up and putting her on a boob. It's 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I'm back in the bed.
Yeah,
so
times like 6 times a night. Times,
exactly.
A year of your life.
Yes.
Times not sleeping.
Yes.
And,
And it did make gender roles very specific, And I know a lot of people pump or feed formula at night, and Dad does it, and that's awesome. That's not how it worked in my house.
Yeah.
And it did kind of put us on certain paths, but just out of necessity.
Yeah. I mean, we had a lot of decision after we got to this, which there was a lot of emotional decisions to get there. But after we got there and did it, everything was like clean and easy. And interesting is I was recently speaking with a great girlfriend of mine who has a kid a couple months younger than Sai, and she was trying to figure out when she was going to end breastfeeding, and there was all these feelings that were coming up for her about, what she was supposed to do and guilt and, all the stuff that women have to deal with. And we didn't have the choice. And it was interesting because, and I can totally respect where she was at, but like we had all these decisions made for us. Like we couldn't breastfeed. So I never had to deal with the question of do you, don't you, what is our philosophy? What do we believe in? Like we didn't have to answer those questions because the answer was it's not possible.
Yeah.
And so it's clean. We're using formula and, I'm sure there's a lot of controversy about what you do and don't do, but like we can't participate in any of that. And it kept everything so clean.
Right.
And it kept like listen, there's as parents now, there's just guilt everywhere all the time.
Right.
On everything like that we do. But there was like all these other things that would have exacerbated that on the backside of the pregnancy
Right.
once he came that were just non-starters for us because of science. And it kept things very like level and easy. And he's an easy kid. And we're so lucky because he's an easy kid. But like everything just felt like by the time he came, it was smooth sailing. And then I have to remind myself that's okay because getting him here was like not smooth sailing in any way possible. So now that he's here, like we deserve a little bit of that.
Yeah, you earned the smooth sailing.
We earned it. So knock on wood, it stays like that because anything could change. And I'm sure we have terrible twos like right around the corner.
And if you have another one, it will definitely change, because the second one may be a pistol.
Yeah.
My second one is a pistol. The first one, I was like, easy peasy. I could do this all day long. The second one, I was like, we will not be having a third. Because someone will die. It will be me or one of them or Bert. One of us is going to die because I'm going to kill somebody. Because Isla was so very energetic and curious and all over the place physically that I couldn't keep up. This week's Wife of the Party is brought to you by Lumi. Do you know what Lumi is? I do, because I have a Girl Scout troop, and when we go camping, we don't shower, and we bring Lumi with us because they have deodorant body wipes, they have all body deodorant, they have cream deodorant, and it is a godsend. I love Lumi. My daughter uses it all the time because it smells really great, and it does a wonderful job of keeping odor and yuckiness at bay for 72 hours, which is a really long time. She's also not a fan of a shower, secret time. But so Lumi is really a big asset in our household. An OBGYN, Dr. Shannon Klingman, met with thousands of women concerned about odor below the belt. And through clinical testing, she discovered it was not the vagina to blame, but bacteria on the skin. So she created Lumi, a pH-optimized aluminum-free deodorant that actually works. And it works everywhere with over 150,000 five-star reviews to prove it. Lumi Starter Pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice like a mini body wash or deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for listeners, new customers get $5 off a Lumi Starter Pack with code WIFE30 at lumideodorant.com. That's LUME deodorant.com. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack when you visit lumideodorant.com and use the code WIFE30. Thank you, Lumi.
Yeah, the 1 to 2 thing seems tricky.
It's awesome, actually. I highly recommend it. I would rather have 2 than 1. I was an only child, and I did not enjoy that. And now as I'm aging, and I have friends one of my closest friends is one of 5, and her mom is having health problems. And they like, you take care of the insurance, you take care of the home health care, you take care of, her food and groceries. And I just all me.
Yeah.
Luckily everybody's healthy, but as I look to the future, I go, wow, I don't have a teammate at all. And that would stink. But I highly recommend if you choose to have a second. I think it's really awesome. And especially if you come at it like you just described, where can be strong and can be rested and you can have kind of an even playing field, it'll be a lot easier.
Yeah.
I breastfed Isla too. So, Georgia was 2. And there's just a lot, that actually was more of a leveling playing field because Bert would have to just deal with Georgia while I dealt with Isla until she was a certain age. And that kind of leveled us out a lot. But it's so fun to have two.
Yeah, I
It's
think
really
we
fun.
say like our lives feel full right now. I think we have everything we need. But we're older parents because this took so long. And I think we look at it and it's, my husband will say like, oh, this is really for Cy. It's like, I mean, I'm sure if it works and there's a second child, it will be for all of us.
Yes.
But the way it feels right now is it's for him
Yeah.
because of exactly what you just described.
Yeah, because you're full.
Yeah.
You feel
we're
fulfilled.
good. And I think again, it's same thing. It's a cleaner decision because we've got this one embryo left. There's only one way in which it's going to work, which is not with me trying it.
Right.
And I'm done. My
Yep.
body's been done since that, come to Jesus I had, those I described in the beginning. And if it doesn't work, then we're fine.
Yeah, this is where it was meant to
it's
be,
different than a woman trying to get pregnant who there's a lot of chance in that. Like there's no chance in that. I mean, there's this much chance, but like there's this one embryo, there's this one woman. It's either going to work or it doesn't. And then the answer is there. Like,
right.
There's no like, if it doesn't work, are we going to go try to harvest more embryos? Like we know for certain that's where the line is.
Right.
That also feels really clean.
Yeah.
Which is, a huge privilege to have that kind of clarity.
Totally.
On what your limits are.
Yeah.
But again, not without a lot of work to get to that point of clarity.
Yeah, but no anxiety about it. It sounds like no anxiety.
Not right now.
And that's great.
Yeah. I mean, talk to me in 3 months when we're trying to get her pregnant.
Oh, wow.
I don't know.
It's like now. That's exciting.
Yeah.
That's good, though, because then your kids will be pretty close in age.
Yeah.
That's really great.
Yeah.
I hope it works.
Yeah.
You have to let me know if it works.
It's going to be, it will be the right thing either way. It
will.
The first time it didn't feel that way. The first time it was like, this is it. And this is these are our chances. And what we were battling with was if it doesn't work, we may not be parents. And what does that mean? And that's going to be a loss that we're going to have to mourn. And we were always good with saying, like, we lived our lives very fully.
Mm-hmm.
I think we maybe talked about that a little bit. Like we counter-programmed what wasn't happening to like be able to do all the things our friends with kids couldn't do.
Right.
And we did that very deliberately. And I think we got so much out of that.
Right.
But I think if confronted with this actually isn't happening for you, this isn't going to happen, like let's get beyond that. I just think that we would have lived with that forever.
Right.
But there was always going to be a limit and a point where we were going to have to stop.
Right.
Like you can't do this forever. Women's bodies don't do it forever. Like there's a certain age limit, biologically, all the things.
Yeah.
So I think now, like it was so emotionally charged that first time, especially when Laura didn't get pregnant the first time. It was just like, this really might not happen for us.
Right.
And that was really emotional. This time, it's like, we have everything we need. We have this amazing child. We've got a great dog. We like live in an amazing part of Los Angeles by the beach. Like we both have jobs. Like what more do we need?
Yeah.
And then if this happens, it's going to be bonus. And if it doesn't, like our lives are full.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
What a great perspective to have. A great way to look at that.
Through time.
Well,
and age.
Time and age, but an experience and just being grateful. Sounds like it's through gratitude that you're grateful for what you have.
Yeah.
And gratitude makes everything easier.
Yeah.
To just be grateful and aware of what you have. What was the hardest? What was the biggest adjustment for you once you had Cy?
I mean, probably all the same stuff as most parents. This is where the story flips, right? It's like, I was thinking about this driving here too, and everyone would say this. So like once the kid's there, like the way in which they come, like kind of disappears.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to think like, what was that experience? Because when I was in it, it was so intense. And it was like all that was happening around us for like a very long period of time. And then like your kid comes and then you're just a parent.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we were doing all the same thing. I mean, we were doing all the same things that other parents were doing.
Yeah.
Minus my recovery.
It's no different.
It was no different. But for the first year, actually until probably just recently, I felt like I had to tell people. Like,
interesting.
Whenever someone would be like, oh, like, or new people I would meet, or people that just didn't know the way in which he came into the world. Like, I felt like I was on this crusade to like not take credit for something I didn't do.
Interesting.
So they would, if someone was like, oh yeah, when you were pregnant, I'd be like, oh, I wasn't pregnant. And I would explain like I had him with a surrogate, or like I don't know if it was a badge of honor. I don't know if it was not taking credit, but it was like, I felt like I needed to say to everyone, like, I didn't do this.
Yeah.
Like he came and he was given to us by this wonderful woman. And like, this is how he came into the world. And until probably like a month or two ago, I was like, that is our story. And it's important. And like, Sai needs to know that's the way he came into the world once he can understand that. Like, I don't want it to ever be a surprise. Not that it's a big deal, but that's his story.
Yeah.
But like, I don't need to shove that down people's throats anymore.
Right.
Like, we're just a normal family now.
Yeah.
I mean, normal. I always put normal in quotes because what is normal?
Yeah.
But we're just a family.
Typical.
2 parents with a kid.
Yeah, you're a
2-year-olds.
typical family.
We're a typical family.
Yeah.
So it's like that kind of faded away.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I need to do that with my fake handbags. Every time I go, it's fake, it's not real. And I'm like, why do I do that? No one even cares.
I'm the same way. They're like, I love that skirt. And I'm like, I got it for 80% off on blank, blank, blank.
Exactly.
I was like, we don't need to do that. But like, I don't know.
You qualify it somehow. For what reason? I just did it today. Someone said, I like your dress. And I went, Old Navy.
Yes.
It's Old Navy.
Why do we do that?
Like they would care if I bought it at Neiman Marcus. No one would care.
No.
But I
feel you.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I wasn't pregnant. I didn't carry them.
Right.
That's so funny.
It's an apologetic female thing, maybe. I
Maybe
don't know.
it is. Or just maybe it's an authenticity piece. I think
There's
for
that
me, it's that I don't want anybody to think that I'm pulling a fast one, or, like, especially I won this Louis Vuitton handbag in a raffle. And I had never had any kind of designer handbag ever. And every time someone would go, great bag, I go, I won it in a raffle. I got it in a raffle. And I think there's just some piece that maybe I want the authenticity to be of who I am to be there. Not that I have any problem with buying a designer handbag. I just didn't.
Yeah.
Like you're being deceitful maybe.
Yeah. I really relate to that in that, I kind of grew up and earned everything I have. There was no windfall of money other than obviously what we talked about earlier with this like last piece of my trust from my dad's passing from his insurance policy. Like other than that, everything I have is earned.
Mm-hmm.
And I came from the ground up. Like I worked so hard for everything.
Yep.
And I think that to your point of authenticity, it's like, I just don't want to be misunderstood. Like if I have something really nice, I want you to know that I earned it and I need you to know that I earned it or something, or that, it's not me. It's not a reflection of who I am.
Yeah.
There's this whole thing right now about like stealth wealth.
I don't know what this is.
It's like, the show Succession and how like all the people grew up obviously with an incredible amount of wealth, but their labels on the inside. So it's like $1,300 cashmere sweaters. You don't know that it's expensive. It's stealth wealth. But it just looks rich.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm the opposite of that.
Yeah.
I want everyone to know that whatever I have is because I worked really hard for it.
Right.
And, I don't expect that that privilege is coming from anywhere but my own hard work.
Right. Totally. I think I feel that way too.
Yeah.
Or that I got a bargain.
Or I got a bargain. Which is the best.
Yes.
It's the best.
The bargain is the best.
It's the best.
Yeah. I got it at a raffle.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've been, every time I wear that bag, I got it in a raffle. I won it.
I feel you.
It's so goofy.
I feel you.
So you said there are pieces, as you were telling me the broad strokes of this surrogacy story. There were some specifics. I don't remember what they were because I'm in menopause. And when you have menopause, you can't remember your last name. But do you remember what those specifics were?
I mean, there's so many places we could jump in.
Well, let's jump in. Where do you think we should jump in?
I don't know what will be interesting to people.
Well, I'm interested in a few things. Like, did you meet were you matched with anyone that you didn't accept? Or was Laura your first match and it just worked?
I think they showed us the agency. So every agency is different. Our agency is very much one-to-one. They don't want to present you. It's not like you can go on and look at profiles and pick someone.
Can't swipe left.
No. And actually, and maybe this is interesting, maybe to me, not sure to anyone else, but in the process of matching, you fill out all this paperwork about who you are and where you grew up and what your values are and your religion and your feelings on abortion, specifically because when you match with a surrogate, and this I think is the most kind of, I don't know, dynamic question that they ask you, but you have to say before you match with someone or as you're matching and signing contracts, like, we are aligned on a plan. If something goes wrong with this pregnancy or there's a test that shows up that like the child is going to be, severely impaired in some way, it's the parents' rights to decide what to do, but it's in someone else's body.
Right.
So you have to know, like, there are things you have to know about the person you're matching with that is like incredibly complicated and intimate and personal before you start.
Wow.
Because it's you sign a contract with the people you're working and it's that contract governs that pregnancy. It's a governance around a pregnancy, which is like fairly intense and crazy.
Yeah.
So you have to answer questions like, if at this point in the pregnancy, if something were to go wrong, would you keep or abort the pregnancy or terminate the pregnancy? And the surrogate has to say that they're comfortable with the intended parents either making that decision or comfortable with terminating if something was wrong or not. If they're not comfortable with terminating if something's wrong and they don't want that procedure done or don't believe in it, then they should match with someone who wouldn't terminate no matter what.
Right.
So I bring that specific thing up because there's obviously questions like, what was your favorite subject in school? And they want you to like find common ground.
Sure.
So that, you're two people who are coming to this thing, but you have to have some like things in common.
Sure.
But then there's these really intense questions of like, scenario things that play out and how you would handle them. And you have to make sure you're aligned on that before you sign any contracts. So, that all happens leading up to these matches, which is why I think the agency, at least the one that we worked with, and I know every agency is different, won't just say like, okay, here's a book of people, pick somebody.
Right.
So they look at your surveys, which are pages and pages and pages of questions.
I bet.
And they match you based on, a lot of different things, geography, willingness to travel, all kinds of criteria. So by the time you get to this like match, like you're pretty much, it's like a matchmaking service, like you're pretty much, people are vetted and on paper are aligned. So I think by the time we got to Laura, we had asked them like, can we maybe, because we'd never done it before, like, could you show us like two women, and they send you like their profile with pictures of them and their family and their whole thing. So I think by the time we got to her, like we just asked like, can we see two, just because we have to understand like what's a point of comparison. And we ultimately selected her, and I'm sure this other woman went on to be a surrogate for someone else. I'm just not sure. Yeah.
I wonder how a woman gets into being a surrogate. I guess they just go to an agency and sign up. I mean,
yeah, I think there's like a network of people. The agencies recruit.
Really?
And I think
they recruit.
And I think it sounds to me, and again, I'm not an expert in the agency side of things. It's, it's a business, but there seems to be like maybe pockets of areas where like maybe someone else in her community did it and had an amazing experience, and then she'll talk about it in the community, and then like other women from the community volunteer to do it or say they want to do it, and then they go through a rigorous vetting process. At least again with my agency, they go through a rigorous vetting process. There's psychologists involved, there's evaluations, there's they have to be approved by my doctor. We have to get all their medical records. So I think, you raise your hand and you say, this is something I want to do. And then there's a whole rigorous process to be accepted into the program.
Right.
I'm sure there's looser agencies.
Yeah.
Ours is one of the original agencies to do it. The woman who owns it is this like amazing woman whose name is Christy. And she was a surrogate in 1981.
Oh my God.
Before IVF. IVF became a thing in the early 80s. So it was at the time that she was a surrogate, there wasn't any implantation of embryos. So when the owner of our agency was a surrogate herself, she was inseminated with another man's sperm and it was her egg.
Wow.
So different than I think, what you were saying before, where how is it for these women to hand over these babies?
Yeah.
It's not their biological
Right.
child and they know exactly what they're doing. And to me, that seems so much more complicated.
Yeah.
It's actually your DNA.
Yeah.
So she was one of like the OG surrogates,
That's
and she started an agency
crazy.
after that. And since then, there's been so much advancement in reproductive technology. And so her agency has kind of followed that. Now it's very different. I don't know if they even, I presume they don't allow that legally anymore.
I would imagine. I mean, that's like having a baby and giving it up for adoption.
Yes.
I would imagine more similar.
Yeah, I would assume. But,
yeah.
I think the way she speaks about it, again, this was a long time ago, and I can't put words in her mouth, but the way she speaks about it, like she knew she always wanted to do this. And in her mind, there was boundaries there. And to me, that's just fascinating.
It's so
fascinating.
Very fascinating.
It's fascinating.
So what right does a surrogate mother have, or a surrogate have? Does she have, this is a very ignorant question.
Ask.
So forgive.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't have any right to your baby, right?
Every state is different.
Really?
Yeah. So it's governed by the state. It's not federal law. California is the most, California has the most state Supreme Court laws and cases about surrogacy, which makes it the most friendly place, I think, in the globe, like globally, to do this. Which is why a lot of people come to California to do it. So it's a great state to have laws of governance protecting the IPs / intended parents. I almost say that as a joke because I think acronyms are so weird, but I think, I don't want to misquote it, but I remember there was a story about like in Idaho, but we should fact check this. But in another state, let's say that what happens, because there's not as many laws governing it, that you basically, the surrogate has the baby and then they turn the baby, like the baby is not the intended parent's baby until after the baby's born. And then you have to like change the birth certificate. Like it happens after.
Yes.
In California, and we need to fact check this, but this is the way it's been explained to me. In California, the contract that you sign gives ownership to the intended parents. So all decisions are owned by the intended parent, even though it's in another woman's body.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at 5 months, paperwork gets filed where like at 5 months through the pregnancy, like it's a done deal. Like you don't have to turn over any birth certificates or anything like that. So it's a very friendly state to do it in. And there's a lot of structure around the process.
Right.
And in our contract, we had a 60-page contract.
Wow.
We
Who
had
read that?
I did. Every
You
word.
did?
Every
Wowza.
word. And it was fascinating. And actually, I learned so much reading it because all the Supreme Court cases that have happened since the 80s till now are in the contract.
Oh my God.
And so it wasn't like a boring contract. It actually was incredibly educational.
Wow.
And when I read, and I had all this information in my brain, but now don't have the space for it. So I discarded it. But 2 years ago, I could have like recited a lot of this to you. But it's really interesting to see like the reasons why we have these laws because of like certain things that happened and things that were taken to the state Supreme Court in terms of like, and some of it has to relate with divorce. There were certain Supreme Court laws that are based on, a biological father not wanting to pay alimony. And like, then it governed how ownership over a child. And so it's really, really interesting when you actually pull some of that stuff up. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Litigiousness sometimes is good. Right?
It is.
Sounds like that's all for good.
It's all for good. And it's also interesting to remember both with fertility advancement and reproductive technology and also surrogacy. Like, I think it's 1981. Like, this is when all of this started. So we're talking about things that are relatively brand new, like 40 years only, and so much advancement and all of these, parts of having children in these unconventional ways that have really happened. Like, I mean, it's happened in my lifetime. So it's all still really new. It's a bit like the wild, wild west and certain things are governing it. But even with infertility, I went to one of the best doctors in the world for infertility who was here in California. And he would say to me, like, there's not always an answer. And I'm like, but you're the expert.
Right.
And science has not caught up to give 100% certainty to a lot of this. It's still so new.
Yeah, right.
It's really fascinating.
It is very fascinating. Yeah. You're so lucky.
I'm so lucky.
Yeah, you're really lucky.
I'm so lucky. I mean, the fact that we even financially could get to this place that we could, having a child for us it was very expensive.
Yeah.
And not everyone has the privilege of being able to do that. And so, it's just, we're very, very lucky.
Yeah, you are really lucky.
It's very lucky. And women who can have babies on their own and it's easy are so lucky too. But, we're also very lucky.
Yes, you're double lucky.
Yeah, that's why he is a true miracle.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he was okay 3 weeks early? Everything was okay?
He was fine. Yeah, he was cooked. He was like 7 pounds, 3. I mean, he was like
fully
fully
totally
baked.
cooked.
Totally cooked.
7 pounds if he'd stayed
he
any
was
longer.
Like 7 pounds, 3 ounces or 4 ounces, something like that. Yeah, he was done. He was done.
What's your favorite part about him?
I mean, he's just like a magic person. I don't know. He's just like a total magic person. Like this week, he's very into music, like very, very into music, obsessed with it. And like this week, he's 2 years old, he pulled out like his little ukulele guitar and he started strumming it and singing Blackbird by the Beatles. Like actually singing the song while he strummed the guitar. I'm like, you're 2.
Wow.
Like this video of him doing that. I'm like, who are you? But he's just like, he's this little magic baby and he's happy and he's silly and he's like a little weird, which I like love. He's just not, he's an old soul. Yeah. He's just I think he's going to be a good human. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. He's really fun.
That's awesome.
And we're just having so much fun. That was the thing that I think maybe you said this before. You were like, maybe it was a question about what surprised me or what was like so many women said to me, the first year is so hard. Like, don't judge yourself. You might hate it. Like, you might hate him. You might hate your husband. Like, it's so hard. It was the hardest year of my life. And I never felt that. And it wasn't not to be in solidarity with other women who had that experience. And I totally appreciate and recognize that. But for us, it was like the journey was so fucking hard that by the time he came, he blinked and it was a joy. He would look at us and it was a joy. He would giggle, he would cry. It was all a joy. It was like, we're like, you are a bonus person.
That's awesome.
And everything is bonus. So I think, my experience was just different, like I didn't, and I didn't want to like humble brag about it when women was like, it's so hard. And I was like, oh, it's not my experience. But also, I think we paid our dues to get there. So
you did.
It leveled us out in a way that
right.
I just can't, I can describe it. I can't describe it. And again, like we also got an easy baby. So I'm sure if he wasn't an easy baby, I wouldn't be saying that.
Oh, well, maybe, but maybe not. A lot of, I think, at least from my experience, when you have a baby from your body, your hormones are bananas.
Mm-hmm.
So part of that, it's so hard, is that your hormones are bananas. That's not all of it, but part of it. I would imagine that I would have handled the stress of it a little better if my body weren't already stressed.
Yeah, I get that.
Because the body, I can't believe what your body goes through. And then it's
like inhumane. And then these women do this, but I get it.
And a surrogate does it as a gift.
Mm-hmm.
No
That's
way.
Right.
I mean, I guess if you give the baby away, you don't have to take care of the baby and your body can kind of
naturally
recalibrate all by itself a little easier.
Yeah.
Than if all of a sudden you're breastfeeding and you're making milk and you're,
Yeah, well, she did actually pump for us for a month.
Wow.
Yeah. So we went, and when we went to see her and her kids, we picked up a cooler of breast milk that we had in our freezer.
Wow.
And that helped her kind of wean. I presume it helped her body kind of
it's good for your
naturally
body,
do what she needed to do. And it gave us we could mix in the frozen breast milk with his formula for a month for the antibodies and all the things that come with that. And so, but she was also I also get to go to the spa and get a massage and I don't have to wake up to a crying baby in the night. And I think it was a very different experience for her too, because she had to take care of the baby.
Yeah. She could just take care of herself.
She was psyched.
Kids.
Yeah.
She was.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you had a great experience.
Yeah. It was really wonderful. And it was, we were very excited for her because it was we kind of knew what that relationship looked like.
Mm-hmm.
And again, and maybe that was one of the other things when I said there's so many places we can dive in. It's a very different relationship,
Right.
you know, and again, everyone's relationship with their, surrogate is also different, but it's like, are you going to be friends? Are you going to be like sisters? Are you going to stay in touch forever? Are you like blood sisters and bonded,
Right.
know? And you come into it just like, what's this going to be like? I'm like jumping into the deep end with someone that I don't know very well.
Mhm.
And, we have different life experiences and we come to things differently and different emotional capacity for things. And what's that going to be like?
Right.
What
What was it like?
She was amazing in that I struggle with boundaries. And that's just like who I am. Like I struggle with boundaries. Like I'm also an empath. So I'm like, I take in a lot and I give a lot. And sometimes that bleeds out to like issues with boundaries with people in general. And I think for me, she was like all business. And so she kind of set these natural boundaries. Like I could have sat on the phone with her for 3 hours being like, tell me everything about the way you're feeling. And are you okay? And is this weird for you? And like just asking, just wanting to get inside her brain because it's so fascinating. And like, she didn't want that.
Yeah.
How are you doing? Okay. Like it was a lot of text messaging. I'm okay. How are you feeling? We're fine. Like she was very boundaried. And I don't know if that's just who she was or if that's what she needed out of this was to have those boundaries. But what it did for me, which was brilliant, is it actually created a boundary that I couldn't have created on my own. I would have just been giving and giving or like, trying to connect. And I'm always looking to find a connection with people in my professional life and my personal life. I was just like looking for that connection so that we can find this entry point and like talk about all the things and like have this emotional connection. And she didn't want that.
Right.
And it actually was really good for me.
It was freeing, I bet.
So freeing.
What another gift.
It was a gift.
Yeah,
and
another gift. Talk about divine intervention, man. Believe in God or not, it's divine. That your whole story is so divine. From your dad's insurance money to finding this woman and not having the first baby.
Yeah.
Who knows, that embryo might have not produced a healthy baby.
Yeah.
Might have produced something you had to abort anyway or terminate anyway.
You never know.
So maybe the path did it for you.
Yeah.
So that
it always does, right?
It does. It always does. If you just
don't know it in the minute, in the moment.
You just listen and trust and just follow what you hear and trust. It always leads you to the right place.
It always does.
Sai was supposed to come here in this method.
Yes.
This is how he was supposed to be here. So.
Yeah. And he was the 4th best of 5 embryos. Like the 4th best. Because they grade them. So it was like they do them like as the best ones go first. So the best 3 were gone.
Right.
And there's these 2 little runts left.
Right.
From the same batch. One is in the freezer and one is him. And you're just like, why was it the 4th one? Like, I don't know.
Because runts are they're the best part of the litter.
Yeah.
They're the best. We have a runt downstairs. Izzy the dog, she was the runt. No one adopted her.
Yeah.
And I was like, why? She's a bull mastiff. They usually weigh about 130 pounds. She's 112. She's perfect. The sweetest dog you've ever seen.
Perfect.
The little runt, I think your story is amazing. And I'm so glad you came back to tell me.
Thank you.
What happened. Because I can't tell you how many people have been like, whatever happened? Whatever happened? We need to know what happened.
I must have seen you at like a very pinnacle point of inflection or reflection on where we were at. Like, I think we knew the direction we were heading in and we were putting the pieces together on it, but maybe it wasn't shored up at the time.
It wasn't certain.
Yeah.
It was, I think this might be where we're going.
Yeah.
And so it was
like it was lining up. It was lining up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you left us with a cliffhanger.
I left you with a cliffhanger. Now you have another one.
And now we have another one. So I can't wait to find out if you have another one. I feel good about it. I think you might.
I don't know. Maybe. We'll see.
And if not, no big deal.
It's all a gift.
It is all a gift.
It's all a gift.
Well, I'm so happy for you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you even being interested in the story.
I love the story. Are you kidding? I loved it.
I'm so happy to hear that.
The story is all about love. All of it. Even the trying and failing for 7 years is about love. It's about trying to create this thing of love.
Mhm.
It's a beautiful story, the whole thing. I'm so happy for you guys.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. I appreciate it.
And drive safe home to go give a bath.
That's right. I know. I mean, look at what the difference a couple years makes.
Right?
Yeah.
It's so true.
Yeah.